Hello, America. I'm Robert Reese, and welcome back to the CEO Show. We're here today with Jeannette Bankes. How are you, Jeannette?
Absolutely phenomenal today. Thank you.
And I'm phenomenal. And everyone listening in, you'll feel that same way because Jeannette is President and CEO, GE HealthCare, that everyone knows about specifically in patient care solutions. So, talk about what your business is.
Thank you, Robert. I have the pleasure of helping lead the area of focus in healthcare that's patient monitoring, anesthesia, diagnostics, cardiology, and maternal infant care. Now, it sounds like four different businesses. When you really look at the healthcare system, my part of GE Healthcare is really the enterprise solutions around the entire healthcare system. So while GE Healthcare is known for imaging as well as ultrasound, I always like to describe, I get to wrap myself around all of the patient use cases, monitoring, as well as partnership. So I have a particularly fun job at GE Healthcare.
And particularly important. But one thing that GE Healthcare has always been known for is being a leader in innovation. So if you were to give a how-to masterclass to CEOs on innovating in healthcare, talk through that process.
Hey, thank you for the question. First, I think no matter where you are in healthcare, and this is going to be more than just the healthcare sector, is you have to know your customer. I think that's fundamentally where a lot of tech companies miss the mark. They want to bring out a widget, a next generation, and do they fundamentally know the customer that they're serving? And the customer definition can be very different among different sectors. But in healthcare, I have the pleasure of doing multiple parts of the hospital system. So OR, ER, all of your ICUs. So do we fundamentally, in a 101 class, know who you're serving? Who is that customer and or patient? More importantly, GE Healthcare has always been known to really be focused on patient centricity. So that's rule number one. Number two, once you know who they are, what are you solving for? We've been known in healthcare to try to bring out new devices, new capital equipment, software, digital. And when you bring out this application, are you really solving an unmet need, or are you cluttering our healthcare system with more capability that they may not have needed, but you're still responsible to sell it for your company? And then I would tell you the third cardinal rule of technology development is once you decide you understand your customer, you understand the problem you're trying to solve, do you really have the critical capability internally to actually do and deliver a quality product that, I will be provocative, brings value to the system? Are you just cluttering more reimbursement, charge model, et cetera? So if you really have that frame of mind in technology development, you're going to have a winner. I think people miss steps in that and they bring out new devices and wonder why they don't make it as profound in the marketplace as they expected.
Well, when you're talking, Jeanette, about the customer, let's say the customer could be an enterprise CEO of a hospital
Mhm.
system,
Mhm.
could be OR, could be different areas. That is changing so rapidly. How do
Mhm.
you stay in touch with the mindset of your customer in this dramatically morphing healthcare world?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's another myth that most industry players have. They actually aren't partners. They think that at the end of the day, they're coming out with this novel technology and it's just going to land. I would say a critical thing that has to be true, especially in my job, is being really close to the entire spectrum of customers. You define customers as one unique one, which is our CEO, CIO, CFO, the value drivers of an institution. I stay very close to them. I have partnerships across the world, not just here in the United States, that really I'm meeting on a frequent basis, trying to understand what their unmet needs are and the challenges they're facing. Think about it. A lot of healthcare systems are pressured just like publicly traded companies with how do I drive value extraction out of my system? So it's real. We'll go back to, look, we're on Zoom, we're remote, etc. This is real internal partnership to try to define their unmet needs and us bring a technology or solution. And so it's human touch, it's human partnership, it's meeting with them on a frequent basis. And when we succeed, they succeed, and vice versa. They need us as much as we need them. So it's truly connection to the customers you're serving. It used to traditionally be, oh, I focus just on the patient. That's not the problem we're just solving. I think about the solutions GE Healthcare is bringing, especially I think about monitoring solutions where you think about the complexity of the nursing shortage, the staff shortage, et cetera. I have to fundamentally in my teams understand that to bring what they need and be willing to pay for the value extraction.
Okay. I like how you're talking how the customer is changing. We're going to talk customers later on. We're going to talk about how the CEO role is changing, part two. But for now, let's stay with that. And really smart how you talked about it's not technology, it's understanding problems. So what do you see as the major, like the mega trends that are driving change in healthcare, that are disrupting healthcare?
I would say a couple things. Number one, a huge disruptor is the overwhelming healthcare system we're playing in. So this is a macro trend. If you look at my background, I've been in multiple specialties. I worked for Boston Scientific, I worked for Alcon. Think about full body ophthalmology to now full patient monitoring, artificial intelligence. I think we're all faced with the same challenge, and it's that in the healthcare system, we're overwhelmed. We always came with the formula that if we bring a good clinical outcome and it's efficacious and it does what it says, we're going to win the business. However, I think the dynamics is that the hospitals are really facing headwinds on staffing shortages. So is our device, our capital equipment, our artificial intelligence actually not only bringing the minimal bar, which is quality outcomes, clinical performance that you expect out of GE Healthcare. Now we need to be more. Now is that same device speeding up the actual procedure? Is it alleviating overhead or personnel that's required to actually monitor a patient? And lastly, is it doing it in a manner by which it can be integrated to what they already do? This isn't I get to sweep the OR and put all brand new devices in. So it's really about clinical outcomes, value extraction, and integration into a financial crisis system that can't afford to buy everything new all the time. So they're kind of the headwinds we're always watching as we're bringing new technology.
I have to tell you, Jeanette, if I were in the buying situation, I would want someone like you who's scientific, who's fact driven, but is going to take the time to understand my unique situation. That's what business is about these days, right? It's
It,
solving true problems and helping solve so the customer can serve their customer better and
absolutely.
helping them preempt.
Yeah. As you get to know my leadership style, and this is my motto to my own team, we actually earn business. We don't just expect business from our customers. And so that's a mindset is that I have to earn your business every day. It's a competitive landscape. And as we think about traditional healthcare, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, it's no longer traditional. There's this gray intersection between companies that are trying to do AI and tip their toe into healthcare, and the healthcare companies trying to tip their toe back into AI diagnostics, the Googles, the AWSs. We're intersecting each other's worlds. And so the complexity and where we play has changed dramatically.
So I have to ask you the highest of high levels. Um, AI is out of the box and more than a lot of us were expecting it to be.
Mhm.
But it's changing just over the last 4 months. It's completely different. I have my own board of directors, including Coco Chanel, on branding. Where do you see the biggest changes that AI will drive in healthcare over the next 3 years? And three
I would
years is
tell
an eternity.
As I was going to say 3 weeks, you might have said to me. But thanks for the question. Look, I'm going to have both an internal and external focus because AI is going to hit us everywhere, especially at GE Healthcare. I'll go first, patient customer centricity, which is external. I think you're going to see us deploying smarter devices. That's one of our missions as we think about bringing a world where healthcare has no limits. That's our purpose. That's what we look to. That's our North Star is we have to actually embed AI capabilities into our machines to be smarter. They're smart devices. So no longer do you have just a generic, and I'll call it generic in terms of a anesthesia machine, which I have the pleasure of having oversight, that just sits as an individual box and doesn't think about EMR integration to the top EMR people in the country. It now has to understand medical device integration. So AI at its start, and I'll tell you a vision we have, is going to be smarter devices that know how to work smarter for the workforce that they're supporting. The second part of AI, and I would say you're going to start to tip it in the next year or two, so I'll give a 3 year limit, is you're going to start to see AI in a thoughtful but also proven manner start to do clinical decision support. So as we make these smart devices, how do you, in a regulatory compliant way, bring algorithms that can allow the staff to understand when you, Robert, are starting to deteriorate? Or, by the way, the following 4 parameters on a monitor would suggest that you're either doing well or you're not doing well. And so for us, the first AI is smart devices. The second ambition, and we're going towards this at GE Healthcare, is how do I now do clinical decision support backed by clinical trials, regulatory requirements, and true factual data that it's quality in nature. So that's external. On the internal side, those that are going to thrive, survive, and excel the most in healthcare are going to bring it full force internally. Think about things like supply chain nuances. COVID taught us that supply chain is not resilient. You can be thrown a complete curveball. And so, as we think about raw materials, we think about personnel, we think about how we staff around the world. Tariff mitigation, big topic, is we have to use AI for us to make smarter business decisions from both resourcing to supply constraints to supply chains to actually even coding. I mean, coding and design history files are done very differently now with AI than we've ever seen in the past 5 years.
We're about to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about something you can tell Jeannette will be great at, which is her leadership philosophy. Back in a few. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to the CEO Show, where we interview the CEOs who have reinvented the fabric of America. We're here today with Jeannette Bankes, as you know, who is the president and CEO of GE Healthcare Patient Care Solutions. And through your whole career, you have been in many significant roles and have gone through many transformations. And give an example of what was one transformative moment, what you went through, and how your decision-making process really worked in there, and what was the outcome?
Well, thank you for the question. I have a theory that I don't think I ever arrive, so I'm always transforming. I think all of us are. Leaders in whatever level you're in, I think my big message is never arrive. You have to continue to transform your leadership competencies, your skill sets, et cetera, to be relevant in what we consider a complex, evolving world that we're leading in. But I can remember, and I would mention this one as probably the most transformative in my career. It was young, and to roll back and do your crystal ball and shake the crystal ball and say, what was I told and what would I do differently, or was that a transformative moment? I would tell you it was. I was 28 years old, and I worked for a brilliant leader. I happened to be working in the pharmaceutical industry, again, healthcare, but for Merck and Company. I'm a native of Philadelphia, so I was in the Philadelphia area. And I had this brilliant leader that saw huge potential in me. We invested in our potential of the future, and he saw that in me, so I was very blessed. As he said to me, Jeannette, I was in a functional technical role, and he saw my appetite as a lifelong learner, and he said to me, no matter what your career aspirations are, whether you want to go up the ladder in one function, across, et cetera, one of the most valuable things I would tell myself, and he was in his mid 50s, is if I just had more enterprise skill sets, the complex decision making that we're doing now, and even back then, it was in the 90s, is we're responsible for very complex businesses. And so the more enterprise skill sets you gain, both breadth and depth, the better leader you become, because you're able to navigate complex situations. If you think about my role as a CEO, I have the oversight of the entire business, everything from ideation to supply chain, manufacturing, technical, clinical, regulatory, commercial. And so that was probably one of the best career advices I was given at the age of 28. And I leaned into it. Well, I've had the pleasure of having multiple roles across the organization. I think I'm a more effective leader now because of that enterprise skill set. And in fact, I would tell you, I'm newer to GE Healthcare. It's one of the things that Pete and team really leaned in and said, this is the leader we need. We need enterprise leaders to run these complex businesses. So I thank the person that groomed me, mentored me, because it's probably been the most valuable advice I was given.
So you're talking about changing, and from 28 years old, how much you have changed and evolved. Let's talk about the concept of being a CEO and how much it's
Hmm.
changed. I remember when I started interviewing CEOs in 2007, it was a very different role than it is today.
Hmm.
Talk about how the CEO role has changed and where you think the CEO role is headed.
Well, I'll start where the last question left off. Look, the technical acumen, the business acumen, the competencies required of CEOs now, today, well, you can lean in and have experts across. And the best leaders are vulnerable enough to say, I don't know everything, that I have to have the strongest staff of experts that allow me to make strong decisions. I don't think that's changed. That's probably been foundationally needed across decades. But that's the IQ. So we always focused on who's the most, highest IQ. Can they lead this both financial and technical driven spot? But now it's evolved. Now it's not just about IQ, it's about EQ or emotional intelligence. We think about COVID and what we went through as a globe in the last several years. I think if I had a leader and I had to do a bet, and I give you a calculated here, it's my analytical background. If I had 20 points and you scored 10 points for IQ and 10 points for EQ, what's my best leader? I would probably err on the side that you have to be smart enough. Like I have to have an IQ that understands some of this business, but I'm going to weigh in on EQ being equally or as dramatically important that you can actually drive and motivate the organizations around you, that you can partner with customers and or healthcare providers and buyers in a system. So I'm going to tell you a perfect score is probably a 17 or 18 to sit in this role. And you would say, well, of course it's going to be a 10 on IQ. No, all day, every day, I would take an IQ of an 8 with an EQ of a 9 because they're smart enough to know to hire people more talented than them around them to actually be successful in the role. So I think the evolution is really IQ EQ balance for the generations we are, for the next generation of young professionals. So if you look in the future, I think that's still going to be true. But I think what's going to actually change in this spot is there's more pressures now more than ever. You can't just juggle IQ, EQ. Now you have to think about your society. You have to think about the communities that you serve. Do you understand environmental impact? And are you both a good leader, but a good citizen around the world? All of our investors, we're publicly traded companies. They're looking not just for the smart, the emotionally intelligent, they're looking for the society global intelligence that we're being better for our world than for ourselves. And so it's evolved dramatically in the last several years.
So if you were to share your leadership philosophy, you're managing thousands of people now, highly complex, ever-changing business. What would you say is core and systemic to your leadership philosophy?
I think, look, I'll talk about leadership style first. It's authenticity and vulnerability. You'll feel that with me as you interview me. Is I believe if we can be our genuine self. Now you're always reflecting on how do I become better. But if I can show up every day being authentic to who I am, being vulnerable enough to know that there's some things I'm not going to know. Nobody knows everything. You're not perfect. But if you're vulnerable with that and you're authentic within your leadership style, people are motivated around you. They understand that you're touchable, that you're not just, the C-suite figure, the CEO, that they're intimidated. Now, people get nervous around CEOs. They want to do well around you. They want to present well. But when you dismiss the fact that we're all just getting more experience and you bring this authentic, vulnerable self, people actually want to work harder for you, work with you, do things to actually get things done. So that's true. And it always has been true of my leadership style.
And there you have it. You just got a PhD in leadership from Jeannette. Jeannette, I want to tell you what a pleasure it is having you on the CEO show.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine. Look, I've had a ton of opportunities to learn from some of the most phenomenal CEOs, peers, et cetera. And opportunities like this let me share my voice and my aspiration of what I think is needed in the healthcare space and in different sectors to brilliantly lead the people that count on us on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And let's all remember 3 lessons that we learned from Jeannette. Number 1, have enterprise understanding. That's like the secret language that can move you in any new community. Number two, focus on EQ, and two key things there are authenticity and vulnerability. But number three, to me, this was the big aha. You never arrive, so keep traveling. See you all next time.